now we will hand the show over to Cindy Madden, Director of Consulting Solutions at Cartus, who will lead our panel discussion, Staying Relevant in Global Mobility Today and Tomorrow, Adapting to the Changing Needs of Clients and Prospects. Cindy?
Thank you, Trevor. Hello, everyone. As Trevor said, my name is Cindy Madden, and I'm going to facilitate today's panel discussion. As you know, yesterday we heard a lot about employee experience, customer experience, and today what we're going to talk about is what we're hearing directly from clients and clients and prospects regarding what they're struggling with, what they're finding as trends, etc. We have 5 topics that we're going to talk about specifically, some of which were discussed a little bit yesterday, but we do think we have a different angle on it for today. So as you're listening to us speaking about these 5 topics, would love to see you think about how you might be able to take some of these topics and some of the nuggets that we discussed today and take them back to your organizations and see how you might be able to implement some of them yourself within your own area of expertise. So before we get started, would like to introduce our panelists to you. Panelists, I'm going to let you each introduce yourselves, and please tell everybody what area of the business you're working in. That would be great. Thank you. Ava?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Ava Norris. I am a Director of Global Talent Mobility here with Cartus. I am originally from Canada. I relocated to the UK on my own about 14 years ago, and I have been with Cartus here in the UK for the last 10 years. My main role in the business is strategic ownership of some of our key global client engagements, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to you all today.
Great. My name is Brenda Thoeny-Johnson. I am a Director of Business Solutions, and I am based just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the land of cheese, Hudson, Wisconsin. And I just wanted to thank all of the suppliers. That was amazing to see those awards. We're so grateful for all that you do. You're truly an extension of what we do here at Cartus. So that was exciting to see all of those awards. And hopefully we'll be able to give you some great information today that will help you further the cause of being one of our best and greatest suppliers. Thank you. Andy?
Hello, thank you. My name is Andy Conduit-Turner. I have been with Cartus for approaching 13 years now. I've been on both sides of this. I've been with Cartus all those years that I mentioned, but I've been an expat myself a couple of times during my pre-relocation days life. I am a Director of Growth Enablement. Put very bluntly, my business is answering questions to our prospects and to our existing clients when it's time to renew our connection together and we go through RFP. So I see the questions they ask, I see the priorities they bring to us, and we hopefully, working with all of you, give them the answers that allow them to continue partnering with us year on year.
Great, panelists. Thank you so much. So our first topic today, our first area of focus is going to be that of flexible mobility solutions. So flexible mobility can be a lot of different things. It might be policy, it might be program related. Brenda, can you talk a little bit about what prospects are talking about when they discuss flexibility with you? And if they're using a core flex policy approach, can you talk a little bit about why they chose core flex, what their goals and objectives are?
Absolutely. So in my role at Cartus, it's very important that I'm talking to not only Cartus clients, but also prospects. So opportunity to really kind of have a bird's eye view of what is happening, what are the trends out there. And Core Flex is something that we've heard for many years now, but it's been slow to actually be adopted. So I think what's interesting is that we're really starting to see core flexions embraced, and actually we're seeing more of a trend move toward a flexible mobility approach. So not even necessarily having core services designated, but really allowing those relocating employees to be able to choose from a selection of services that are really going to help them and their families move and get settled so that they can begin their new position or new role within the organization. So I think it's really interesting that some of the things that have come up, and very outside of the box ideas in terms of what are services that maybe were not offered in the past outside of the traditional household goods, home sale, temporary living, et cetera. We're seeing some very creative, unique solutions that span from, housekeeping type services, more settling in type services, dog walking, you name it, we're seeing it. So it's really great. What I would really encourage all of our suppliers to do is to really dig in and figure out within your service vertical what you could do outside of the box, outside of those traditional services. Because again, more and more we're hearing that flexible approach and the ability to really meet each employee where they're at and where their family is at is what's very important to our clients and our prospects. Cindy?
That's great. Ava, do you have some thoughts about what clients are doing in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you should say out of the box, Brenda, because yeah, that's definitely what my clients are looking for. And I think when I think about flexible solutions, when I speak to my clients about flexible solutions, it isn't always in a typical core flex policy. I often see it mean flex within policy entitlements. And my clients approach this in different ways. One way that we've been doing a lot of work with is a discretionary fund. So we essentially have a pot of money, if you will, for individuals. It ranges between $1,000 and $2,500 US, depending on that employee's job grade. And it's really for Cartus to use our discretion in creating what we like to call moments that matter. So we can use it to flex up in policy elements. I mean, very typical examples is adding additional excess baggage in lieu of an air shipment, or covering additional temp living costs, maybe special crating for a very unique item. But what we're seeing more and more is true special moments for families especially. And this is where, again, maybe a slightly different take on thinking outside the box, but where I often look to our supplier partners to help us with ideas on how we can get super creative with offerings beyond, I guess, like the typical welcome basket, or I think we see a lot of like first grocery shops and things like that. Some of the examples we've seen, Build-A-Bear travel companions for children, where they get to build a bear in the home location. It's their travel buddy. It goes on the plane with them to the host location. We've seen suppliers source tickets for local attractions in that location for children, depending on their specific interests. Maybe additional appliances for temp living units. We have put a lot of air fryers in units recently. People are very emotionally attached to their air fryers. But things that are really individual and tailored to that individual and family. We did indoor basketball hoops, like little ones, recently for a child who was absolutely basketball obsessed. And while we're always thinking of creative solutions, we really, really welcome kind of off the wall thinking into how we can use some of this discretionary money.
That's great, Ava. That's really good to know. Andy, any thoughts in this area?
Of course, thank you. When we look at it from a policy design perspective, and what people come and ask us at Cartus when they're considering partnering with us, is what it could look like from a design principle. So if we rewind a few years back to what policy was like when it was under a more traditional model, you'd see a lot about this equity of experience. There was the worry of that water cooler talk. Oh, I moved 5 months ago and I got this, and now my colleague has moved and they've got something very different. With the advances in technology and our modeling capabilities that allow us to better serve flexible programs, now it's about an equity of choice. That people's experience can differ because it can be very much more tailored to them and what is important to them. That not only creates efficiencies in delivery and potentially the efficiency of the spend, but making sure that the things that people are engaging with and their experience is truly meaningful for them. And as mobility programs become increasingly a great tool for talent attraction, engagement, retention, these are things that mobility teams are really seeing a lot of value in. And as these resources to actually deliver really effectively programs like this continue to enhance themselves, this is where we're able to see us really being taken off the chain in terms of how creative and innovative we can be in the services that we offer. It's an exciting time.
Thanks, Andy. It sure is. So basically, I think it sounds like our key takeaway for this whole flexible mobility lies in the flexibility part of it. So audience supplier partners would like to just ask you to think about how do you take this flexibility within your own organization and whatever your area of expertise is? How do you even make it more flexible than it's been, considering employee experience and maybe even some cost savings if that's a possibility? So just kind of mixing it up, but from a flexibility standpoint. So our next topic is going to be DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we know we spoke about that at length last year. But what I think we want to really talk about this year is how has it changed? Now we're a year later, companies have really taken DE&I under their wing and have really grown it in different ways. Ava, do you want to talk about that a little bit, what you've seen from a DE&I perspective?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my clients are absolutely talking about inclusivity from a policy perspective. I think that's nothing new. One of my clients is actually in the kind of preparation stages of launching a policy review early next year. And DEI is definitely a consideration when reformatting this policy. We were just talking about it last week. As with Cartus, we've seen many clients approach or appoint senior leaders that are dedicated to that space. And with this particular client, they do have an internal resource and an internal DEI strategy that will definitely impact the overall policy review. Interestingly, I've heard a lot of change from a general hiring perspective. So not necessarily only with mobility, but just generally, where that employee diversity is now a key part of the hiring criteria. And we're seeing scenarios where maybe they're hiring a second or third place candidate to meet those diverse hiring goals. So we know that this is totally front and center for some of our clients to ensure that they're building that truly diverse workforce. And this definitely filters down to us in mobility as the people that are actually relocating their employees around the world every single day. And while we talk about policy goals and kind of broad stroke organizational DEI strategies, we also see scenarios pop up in a day-to-day service delivery capacity that aren't necessarily in policy, they're more process, but definitely require a level of sensitivity and proactive thought. I was originally going to come and talk about equity and language solutions here today, which is still very, very important, but I actually had a case that came up within the last couple of weeks that I thought was very relevant to this discussion. And looking back now on this particular example, it seems crazy that we didn't kind of see it coming or have the structure in place. But I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was a really great example and a really great reminder as that how we, both ourselves and our supplier partners, cannot be complacent. And now is the time for us really to be working together and partnering to identify where we can improve these processes to truly embody our DEI goals. So this particular case was relating to interns. So to give a bit of background, this particular client has a significant intern type population. So they go into the country for around 6 months. They're put into shared accommodation. It's block booked. It's nothing new. Each has an individual room within the accommodation and they share a common space. They're very rotational moves. People are coming in and out very regularly. And it has been very commonplace for all genders to share accommodation. It's never surfaced as an issue. It's a long-standing policy. It's been going on for a long time. But we actually had a recent escalation from an intern who had moved into a shared accommodation with a female. And he informed us that he was married and it was against his kind of religion to cohabit with another female. So of course, alongside the provider, we were very accommodating. We moved the employee immediately to another unit and we were very conscious and respectful of his faith. But it opened up quite a few questions for us. Previously, we had been asking questions, but obviously not detailed enough questions to make sure that it was okay for different genders to share. And as you can imagine, it is incredibly sensitive when we're bringing religion into this discussion. But it made us take a step back and really think about how we can be more accommodating to this population. We have engaged our lovely Lisa Johnson, our Director of DEI Solutions, to support us in crafting the right questions. So making sure that we're asking employees the right kind of idea to when they're moving into this shared accommodation and thinking about how to go about this solution in the right way. So we're currently working on an intern housing needs assessment form going forward that does consider gender, thinking about single gender units, neutral gender units, and digging a bit deeper into how interns are self-identifying and giving them the opportunity to provide more detailed feedback on preferences. So again, it's not just about gender, it's also things like sleep schedules and smoking or vegetarianism versus just assuming that everyone everyone is okay immediately with a neutral gender accommodation. And I just wanted to give the example, I guess, because it was a situation that hadn't occurred before because it had never come up. But we really need to employ a really critical eye to review processes for their inclusive approach from both our perspective and a partner perspective. Andy, Brenda, anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think it's so important. What we're hearing out in the industry is that clients and prospects are much more sensitive to some of those perhaps invisible, either it's a disability or a preference, et cetera. To your point, Ava, we weren't maybe asking all the right questions. And so this is definitely an area that I know a lot of people have said, oh, we covered this. This DE&I is 2 years ago. DE&I is a long-standing initiative at Cartus. It is incredibly important to us. It is incredibly important to our leadership team and also to supply chain, that this filters down to all of our suppliers. So it's not going anywhere. This, even though we scratched the surface in the last couple of years with some changes in policy, et cetera, there's still a lot more work to be done. Unfortunately, one of the things that I have seen over the last probably 6 to 9 months is within organizations, a lack of those dedicated roles to DE&I. Again, a couple of years ago, it was a really big push. Every organization brought on some type of a DE&I dedicated professional. We are seeing a little bit of a pullback from that, but it's still obviously something that is incredibly important. I'm sure Andy can expand on this. We're still being asked about this in every single RFP that we respond to. So it's certainly not a topic that is going away, nor should it. And I just want to ensure you that this is something that is going to continue to be a top priority here at Cartus. Andy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, when we talk about D&I in general, we've talked a little bit about what our corporate partners do in terms of their mobility programs and their employee programs. Brenda already touched on the topic that these are the questions we get asked as well. So on one side, yes, we are absolutely asked what we do to support their mobility program and their aims to do it. And a lot of that harkens back to what we spoke about a few moments ago about flexibility. Having those flexibility and those flexibility of choices helps them put a structure in place to deliver on those D&I considerations. But they're also asking us a lot about our organization, and in turn, organizations like all of you, the people who we partner with, they want to know that we share some of those values and we have those commitments to make sure that we are engaging with and we are spending money with people who share those values and are also working towards some of those common goals together. So it comes to both sides from us, and we could talk about this in some other topics a little later as well. The level of questioning we're getting, we rewind a couple of years ago, and maybe these were small questions saying, do you have a D&I program? What D&I initiatives do you have? Right through now to really looking for great amounts of detail on what we're doing, what innovations are we coming up with, where are we going next, what is our long-term plan in these spaces. So to Brenda and Ava's points, the commitment to this is a long term, and actually taking these really, really positive corporate intentions and turning them into defined actions that they can look at, they can show that work has been completed, and really see the impact and change that they're looking at, be it generational differences in any way that you could divide people into in the world. They want to make sure they're respecting all those differences and really treating each employee they support as an individual.
So, Andy, that was pretty much a good wrap up of the topic. What I would say to our audience is, as you hear those examples and what Andy said at the end here, think about in your own organizations, how can you better customize the services or programs that you're offering, just to make sure that that employee, whatever their level, whatever their demographic, and their family, feel like they're included and they belong by the way you treat them in a customized fashion. We know you can't customize every single thing, but if you can hear what people are asking for and you can maybe make one little change that will help their particular situation, that would be fantastic. So, as you know, DE&I is part of ESG, and so now we're going to move to one of the other topics that's ESG related, and that's sustainability. Andy, we kind of like this topic, so we'll let you kick this off. Can you talk a little bit sustainability and how it's being addressed at Cartus?
Sure, I can start with Cartus, and I'll talk about why we're starting this at Cartus. And that
Great.
is really heavily driven by the experience of our clients that we work with. So as of last year now, looking at data released by the UN, over 90% of both the world's population and for the business world, the gross domestic product is covered under some form of government level sustainability and emissions target. And what that means is that our clients, those large corporate organizations, are focusing on that themselves as well. We took a look at the response from our 100 largest clients in terms of the volume of their mobility program. And what we learned is that more than 90% of them have a public commitment towards sustainability. Over 3/4 of them have either a dedicated person or entire department to looking at their sustainability as a business. Now, what that also encompasses in direct engagement with what they describe as their entire vision. So, from a corporate perspective, that is both the impact of the products they produce when they are engaged with by their customers, and where it most comes important to us, their supply chain, which encompasses both Cartus as their supplier and all of our partners who work with them and their mobility programs through us as well. So this brings a lot of questions to us and a lot of requests for commitment to us from the people that we work with. And again, we talked about this in the DE&I space. The questions we see in an RFP, again, if I look at even a short time ago, 18 months, 2 years, the questions we had on sustainability were pieces of ancillary information. Do you have a sustainability program? It was a nice to have piece for all but the clients that were the furthest along on the sustainability journey at this time. Now, the vast majority of the RFPs that we respond to ask us increasingly detailed questions on the performance and the engagement that we have in sustainability spaces and those of our suppliers. And in terms of not only the detail of the questions we're asking, but we're also getting feedback from our clients on the weighting of our response to these questions. So really looking at, as a procurement decision, the answers and our ability to engage on these topics are increasingly moving up the list of how important they are when they come to make a decision of who they're going to work with. So what that actually means to us is that we're doing our best to work on it. We've been engaging in a lot of different areas where we can really look at what our impact as Cartus is and look at enabling across our entire network how we can offer our clients more sustainable choices, how we can make sure that our business operations are optimized to be as environmentally friendly as we can be. And of course, we're always at risk of this becoming almost a boogeyman or some compliance nightmare that people see coming at them. And the reality is, we want to avoid that. We want to make sure that any type of sustainability program is not a stick to beat people with, or something that becomes restrictive to the business, or is too umbrella and is not nuanced enough to understand the different areas of business and the different geographies that people are all working in. So what we're really looking to do is foster really positive engagement and look at what all of our teams individually for their particular areas can do to engage in this topic and to make meaningful contributions, but without limiting the important services that they provide. Nobody here on this call, I'm happy to speak for all of you here, no one wants the solution to sustainability be, hey, we just shouldn't move people anymore. That would be a very poor decision for us to make and suggestion to put forward. So it's about doing what we do in as optimal way as we can.
Brenda, you look like you're chomping at the bit to say something.
Oh, I am, because while I'm so passionate about this topic, I think at times, I just want to kind of piggyback on what Andy said. We always think so big, and it's really the small things that add up over time. When you go to the airport and you bring your own water bottle and you refill it, and there's the little section that says, this is how many water bottles, have made it out of a landfill because you chose to refill your water bottle at this refill station. It's little steps like that. So I think the message that I am hearing from clients and prospects is, while it's important, it hasn't truly trickled all the way down to mobility yet. So I was just at the Minnesota Employee Relocation Conference at the end of August. And one of the leaders in the industry was talking about sustainability. It was part of a panel discussion. And she actually asked all the corporates in the room to raise their hands if they were being tasked by their organization to actually show sustainability efforts. And almost nobody raised their hand. While the topic is there and we're moving in that direction, we're not there yet. So the message that I received is, let's continue to work towards this, but let's not get overwhelmed. I had the opportunity to attend a household goods conference earlier this year. And while the idea of converting all of our trucks across the world and vehicles to electric vehicles, it sounds great in theory, but unfortunately, we don't even have the resources to build the batteries, nor do we have the infrastructure to be able to charge all of those trucks and cars. So again, I think what we would like to ask all of you as our supply chain partners is to really think about, what can you do on a small scale? What is really realistic? Think temporary living, and putting a little note on the thermostat to turn it off if they leave for the day, if the air conditioning was on, or providing a refillable water bottle that they can just refill, maybe a Brita filter that's attached to the faucet or in the refrigerator. So a lot of little things I think will go a long way. So don't get overwhelmed by this. Baby steps. We're all in this together. And I think if we can all do those small things, we're going to see a big change collectively.
Ava, a couple of thoughts here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Brenda and what she's been saying. I think with my client base, it isn't something they are being tasked to report back to their senior leadership on. It's more of an idea. And I would say that more risk averse or very cost conscious organizations, it is more difficult to get some of these ideas across. But I have had some interesting discussions on some weird and wonderful kind of approaches. I was chatting to a client last week about using used parachutes, company that used parachutes for packing goods for household goods. I thought, that's a really interesting idea. We had a good chat about it, but really they were saying, well, how can you guarantee the quality of the shipment and what's the data behind it? So it's more of a kind of high level, pie in the sky kind of discussion, but they really appreciate those ideas coming through. So again, from a supplier partner perspective, I love getting those, like, oh, we've seen a company doing this kind of fun thing or this weird thing. I think our clients really appreciate it as a thought leadership perspective to know that we're being very progressive in that kind of space. From a
That's
thought
great.
perspective.
Thank you.
If I may dive in one more time, Cindy, what the
Andy, we're out of
examples
time.
that
We have to go on to the next topic. I'm
are
sorry.
too bad.
I know, I'm sorry. So my quick summary on this is just going to be what I think everybody was saying, which is take small steps. We're not asking you to go out and buy a new fleet of trucks. We're asking you to just take small incremental steps in which you'll be able to show improvement along the way on sustainability. So now we're going to turn to a totally different topic, which is return to work that we've all been hearing about, and remote work. So what we know is that there really is no one trend in this area. We have companies like Cartus that are fully remote, and some of you in the audience are still fully remote, and that's how you're going to continue working. There are other companies now who are saying hybrid is perfect. You come into the office 2 or 3 days a week, and then you can work from home the rest of the time. And then there's others that are saying, oh no, you're in the office and you're in the office every day or you don't have a job. So I think from a mobility standpoint, what we're trying to figure out is how do we understand, is this impacting mobility or is it not? Will it may be impacted in the future? And if so, how? So Brenda, you want to talk about that a little bit and maybe a little bit about Gen Z too, because we know you have something interesting to say about how they're looking at their future work life.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think the great news is that number one, people, humans, inherently want new experiences. They enjoy moving, they enjoy experiencing new cultures. So the thought that the industry, may go by the wayside, it's not going to happen. There are so many organizations out there that really see the value in truly allowing their management teams, their executive leaders, their C-suite team members to actually have that global experience and perspective. So those developmental programs, those are not going anywhere. I think what I'm hearing a lot is we're seeing a hybrid approach. Companies are seeing the value in having their employees together at least part of the time so that they can collaborate and have those great, interpersonal experiences, even if it's just in the, lunchroom, grabbing a coffee, etc. So there's even one organization that I talked to that this was a West Coast based company, and a lot of their team members self-selected to move. It was not a supported move during COVID, and so they were given the approval to leave the West Coast and went elsewhere. Well, now that the mandate has come down that they need to return to the office at least in a hybrid basis, the company is actually evaluating what talent is really important. And those individuals, believe it or not, that self-selected and moved on their own are actually being offered relocation benefits to get back to the location where they're needed. So I think that's really interesting. As far as Gen Z goes, this is the newest generation that's in the workforce, and every new generation, it seems, gets a little bit picked on, a little bit beat up, but I think they've got a really great attitude about how they want to have a work-life balance. It's incredibly important to them. But what's also important to them is having those worldwide global experiences. They love to travel. They've grown up traveling. It's very, very important to them. So I see these developmental programs as being incredibly important. There was another organization that actually said that when they are looking at this new generation, one of the programs they're looking at putting in place is once they've hit their 12-month mark, that those individuals will have an opportunity to go live and work in a global city of their choice where there is a company office for a month, for 30 days, which I think is really a great incentive. This is part of the relocation package. It's part of the benefit once they've met their 1-year commitment. And I think that's going to speak volumes for this up and coming generation, Generation Z, that really is truly the future of our workforce at this point. So my takeaway on this is we are going to continue to be relevant. Yes, there will be more short-term assignments, but there's still going to be the need to move people, not just domestically here in the US, but globally.
And Ava, what are clients telling you? Same thing?
Absolutely. We are seeing a huge shift in the demographic that's being relocated. And I think a big shift in the perception of value of a relocation. So I'm definitely seeing a lot less of the kind of traditional senior leaders, high-level managers moving, and a lot of bigger shift to the younger demographic, internships, rotational moves, really an opportunity for those Gen Zers to relocate around the world. And it is a totally different value proposition for organizations. They're investing less in the relocation. Yes, that does have a downstream impact to us, but fundamentally they're moving more of them. They potentially have smaller packages, but they're getting a really different type of talent. So really enthusiastic, really productive output from a younger generation. They may not be getting the same kind of lifelong tenure that they had, but they're okay with that. It's a different thought process. They're getting a fresh perspective, and there is a ton of value in that from a talent acquisition perspective. And also we know that investment in somebody, even at the start of their career, are very long-term employees. And I think from a service delivery perspective, my team is becoming very agile and able to relocate, all generations and all age groups, and having a very different approach for each one. But I'm seeing a huge shift where, one mobility program now has a huge selection of different types of relocations. And I think from a supplier partner perspective, being able to have lots of different service offerings for potentially those lower cost moves or lower less service packages is hugely beneficial if we come out and we maybe only want a really tiny version of maybe our normal package. Yes, it's less revenue for us, but if you're moving more of them, it adds up.
Andy, your thoughts?
We've talked a lot about Gen Z. I'll do it European style. But of course, we're in a world now where we are actively, our workforce is composed of, depending on where you place Gen X, 3, possibly even 4 active groups, different generations that they're working on. And it goes back to that piece of diversity, not only in these generations, but also for different industries and how possible remote or hybrid work is for those groups. If you want parity with your workers whose job is hands-on, physically on stuff, and even your administrative staff, so you're being fair to them, are also spending time to keep their networks going in there, we are going to continue seeing people relocate. What it might mean, even for the people relocating, is that their choices and where they choose to live in relation to the office and the services we offer them, the values they have, and the priorities when they're looking for where they're going to live, maybe they shift. But it all feeds into a common topic you're hearing from us today, which is about that diversity of choice and the ability to innovate that we're able to offer. The range of services and the values that people have has probably never been broader.
That's great. That's great. So to summarize this topic of mobility and its relevance, obviously it's still there. It may look a little different. It may continue to change, but it's definitely there. So audience, again, as you think about your own organization, how can you showcase the relevance of mobility with what you're doing today? And as Eric said yesterday, how do you drive value? So be thinking about those types of things as you go back to your organization and try to maybe change things a little bit to make it, again, more relevant. So our last topic for today is AI. And we did hear a little bit about that yesterday. But Andy, I'd love for you to discuss how you believe AI can support global mobility and what our audience should know about it and be thinking about in relationship to it.
Sure thing, Cindy. I think almost everyone listening here will have had some kind of discourse, or you go on LinkedIn for a second, it's every other article, right? People are talking about AI because it's incredibly exciting. It's been behind the walls of silicon companies and maybe the subject of science fiction for a period of time. Very quickly, it's become super publicly accessible, and therefore there are a lot of products out there in the marketplace. People are excited to use it, and people are excited to engage with it. And the thing that might drive some fear in a lot of industries is, oh my goodness, are my services going to become less relevant? Is everything going to become self-service and automated? Where do I fit in the same way anymore? From Cartus, as I'm sure you'll have heard yesterday, we have an excitement and an interest in looking at what could be applicable within the relocation space and where it can add a lot of value. But the thing I think we're all very comfortable saying is that you look at the feedback we get from the work that is done by our consultants at Cartus and the relationships and the value that people get from the human support that they're offered. Expand that to our supplier network. The commentary we get about the value that people have from the people that support them in a move. We are fundamentally a people business. So our approach towards AI and its true value when it comes to supporting the mobility programs is really in finding ways in which it can take out some of the administrative burden, make sure that all of our people are best equipped to be able to support people, which is what they have been doing the best at for years upon years upon years, time immemorial. So AI and our engagement with it is going to be a lot about making those communications more quickly, doing the background stuff and the administrative tasks more efficiently. So the service that continues to attract phenomenal feedback can be easier to make the time for.
Anybody else?
I just want
Okay,
to,
go ahead.
I guess, just reiterate that technology is great, and technology is something that's obviously not going away. But for those of you that don't love technology or it intimidates you, I think we need to remember, back to what Andy said, the heart of what we do in this industry is we serve. We are a service organization. And that truly is something that can never go away. Moving is such a personal experience. It's such a stressful experience. And we have the honor, and I truly mean that, we have the honor of being able to help people get through what many view as a very traumatic event in their life. They're excited about it, but it comes with a lot of stress. And so we have the ability to help guide them through that. So while I agree with Andy, I think there's so many things that we're going to see from a technology perspective that are going to help our industry continue to be more efficient, et cetera. I just don't want to lose sight of the importance of that personal human connection and touch in this highly important and service-oriented industry. Ava,
And Brenda,
anything to add?
that's exactly what I would say as a, in summary about this topic. There's, like Andy said, there's great ways to use AI to streamline processes and different areas of the business. But again, nothing replaces human touch and human interaction, right? So that's what we really need to focus on. Okay, we're running out of time, so we want to make sure we stop here. And Trevor, over to you for some Q&A maybe for the panelists.
A bunch of questions in here already with some ties in the upvoting. So I'm going to go ahead and give place of pride to the person who is willing to put their name on it, Bryce. Thank you, Bryce. And this probably could be answered by anyone. Are clients willing to pay more in service fees for higher levels of sustainable or environmentally friendly services? A loaded question, but who wants it?
I don't mind taking that one, only because I've just had a conversation with a client about this last week. And I think, it's not an easy answer, right? It depends on the client and it depends on their internal tolerance for cost savings versus employee experience and sustainability initiatives. I think a lot of clients are still very risk averse and cost conscious when it comes to this because there's often not a lot of data to back up these options. They're still very new. But I think going forward, as the global mandate for sustainability really improve in a lot of countries that have kind of targets for sustainability action, we will see companies, maybe they don't want to, but they'll be kind of forced to bring a lot of this stuff in place. But yes, I think depending on the solution, this is why I say the more kind of interesting options and things that we can actually put front of clients in a tangible way. My clients are definitely okay with adding money into the service fees to take some of this stuff on. And that goes for sustainability, also goes for, increased levels of support in other areas. But depends on the company, I suppose. Easy answer.
I think transparency is the key for that as well, Ava, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're having a direct conversation with someone, said, yes, you have sustainability goals that you've asked us to innovate and present to you. This is what the real life financial impact is. And then every company, based on their priorities, will balance what level of cost increase is relevant for what achievement in a sustainability space.
Thank you both. Jumping up the food chain here, our next question. Do you anticipate a reduction in core benefits in lieu of flex benefits in the future? If so, which services are you seeing being reduced that were typically considered core in the past? And Ava and Andy, since you just jumped in, maybe Brenda or Cindy to start this one?
Sure,
Brenda, you can go first.
absolutely. Sure. Yes, I absolutely am seeing, specifically from prospects, Ava might be able to speak more toward the client side, but definitely a push for flexible options. Now, when I say that, doesn't mean that those traditional options of a household goods move or homeowner support, home sale, home purchase, or temp living, or any of those DSP services. It doesn't mean that those are not being offered. It just means that companies are very much in an effort to attract and retain talent. They're realizing that it starts at the very beginning of that relationship. And so they understand needs to be a wide range of options available to each employee that's relocating, and that what may be a priority to one employee may not be a priority to another. So again, I think that the majority of the core benefits that we have seen, the really big important pieces like moving your personal belongings, et cetera, those are always going to be top priority for organizations. However, again, we kind of see this on the coast and it works its way to the middle of the country here. And then I can let the other two speak a little bit more about the global presence, but definitely, see more of a need to let people choose and to have that ability to make the choice themselves. So I think it depends on the company, but I do see more flex across the board as opposed to focusing on the core.
Yeah,
I
and just
think
a
that
different angle to that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead, Ava.
I was going to say, just a different angle to that. I've seen organizations really look at what is the most impactful to employees when they're looking at what is going to be core. So for an example, I worked with a Middle Eastern client, and they completely removed household goods out of all of their core offerings. But what they added in was cross-cultural training, which is, I think, unusual to be in a core benefit. But for them, it was really important that a lot of employees from Australia and from the US and from the UK were moving into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Having that cultural training was absolutely considered as a core aspect, whereas household goods shipment, they didn't consider so much of a core aspect. But I think they're looking at what's really unique and specific to what they need in their population.
And I think it also depends on who your clients are. Sometimes we have client contacts who have actually been on assignments and they know the value of cross-cultural training. They've seen it themselves and they've lived it. So they would include that. We work with clients every day from a diverse background, and then also the objective again of why they're going to a core flex. Is it employee experience or is it cost containment? It depends on the company, and sometimes we always try to get as much into our core benefits as possible, but we do recognize that flex is the name of the game these days. And so you do want to have a good amount of flexible options so that employees do feel that they're getting the things they really truly need. But again, core is important, and we do work very closely with companies to try to understand their cultural philosophy and to explain what we have seen historically as important benefits.
Thanks all. Boomeranging back to sustainability, do we expect sustainability performance to become a more formal performance measure in the future?
I guess I'll jump on this one, Trevor. Thank you so much. I'm not speaking for Cartus here. One thing as we do look at this in the future would be that anything we bring forward would be, I think as we talked about in the topic, very well considered, very well planned out and discussed across our supplier network before it was landed on anyone's desk, because we need to make sure that it is about engagement and also is fair across people's business units, their focus and their geographies as well. When I see it as a procurement decision as it reflects to Cartus being chosen, I can imagine a future, especially as both the SEC in the US and the EU look at reporting requirements. It will have a factor in the future, I believe, certainly for us, and there will be a part to play across our networking, making sure we're all showing relevant levels of engagement to make sure we're meeting, of course, those legal requirements that come our way. But all in design here, nothing that anyone's expecting an email about on Monday or anything along those lines.
Thank you. I love this next question I'm going to ask. We haven't gotten one like this before. As a supplier, I'm aware that we need to be prepared to assist with hidden or invisible disabilities. This can be a sensitive topic to broach, obviously. Do you have suggestions regarding how we can ensure relocating employees know that we are sensitive to their needs and ready to make accommodations in any way we can?
I'm limbered up. I can go if anyone else is ready.
Go for it, Andy, and then I'll piggyback on what you say.
I think, my business is answering questions and those wording. And you're right, wording is incredibly important. You certainly don't want to fall into a trap of when you're trying to be sensitive to anyone's individual needs, ask them a question that in itself puts them in a difficult situation. I think it's definitely something we want to have conversations across our network to really get everyone's valuable input in there. But the initial solution could be as simple as a final question that opens up with, is there anything else that you would like us to know that we should know, or things that we could accommodate to make your experience better? and make sure that we are showing at the very beginning that we are open, not just to the boxes that you want to tick or the questions that we're asking you to answer, but being open to say, we're ready to listen to anything else that you would like to tell us. I think that carries us an awfully long way.
Yeah, I would agree. That was what I was going to say. I'm actually going to be helping facilitate a session at the GWS event in October in Boston. Hopefully, I'll see a lot of our supply chain partners there. Say hello if you see me. But I think, again, being able just to ask that overarching question of, is there anything that we need to know that would make your relocation, your move exceptional, that would make you more comfortable? So, that's really the best that we can do. We know that we're kind of limited in terms of how personal we can get. So this is a very valid question. But I think just multiple times, I know from a consulting perspective, when we're talking about our consultants here at Cartus, that question is asked many, many times. They fill out initial sentiment tracking, information about, is there anything important that I need to know that your family, would find very helpful, et cetera. So I think asking it multiple times, perhaps even in multiple different ways when they're having the conversation, in writing via email, et cetera, so they know that it is really important and that they can feel comfortable disclosing that information.
Yeah, and I would say also lean on the information that the consultants are giving you, because again, to Brenda's point, my teams will have those discussions with people as part of their initial calls. We're also very closely connected with the HR business partners within the organizations that we support. So often we will be given some of that information as a precursor to even speaking to an employee. So we have an idea of requests that we potentially need to pass down to yourselves as partners.
And the piece of that can be frustrating is that sometimes the who it's really incumbent upon to tell us will not, because they do not want their company to know about their special needs child or what the issue might be with a partner or whatever. And so it only goes so far, right? So there are times where someone may go to their new destination and end up, one of the family members maybe is in a wheelchair and they haven't shared it with us. So we have to be aware it's only as good as people being willing to share in advance, so people don't have to scramble on the other end. But at times you will have to scramble because that's just what happens.
Appreciate those insights, and so does our attendee audience. One comment right now: interesting insights, thanks to this great panel. So throwing that out there before our final question, if we can squeeze it in as a speed round here. Do you think the return to work trend will result in more relocations, or is the trend going to be that employees simply look for new positions where they do not need to go into an office? Who wants that hot button?
I think we'll see the shift in the demographic change. I don't think that we're going to see a significantly less number of relocations. I think we're seeing the type of relocations change. Again, one of my clients, they have maintained the number of moves they had pre-COVID, but the type of move has completely changed. We're actually seeing an increase now. So more moves on one of my clients than they had pre-COVID, but a lot of those are rotational or internships.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just back on that. The short-term domestic assignments here in the U.S., we're definitely, seeing an increase in that. So again, I think I don't see an overall dramatic decrease, but I think it's going to be the type of move. So I completely back you up on that, Eva.
Yeah, the guys already hit it. Types of move is where we're going to be seeing shifting. But you did mention, are people just going to find different jobs? We've talked about diversity as well. It's going to be a personal choice that people engage with. We've talked about Gen Z as well. A lot of those guys increasingly, they choose the companies they want to work for based on values. And Brenda also spoke to their, focus on work-life balances. I genuinely believe as people look to engage with certain employers, the offers and the work environments they offer and the expectation of what their work environment is going to look like will really feature in the people they choose to work for and how they attract talent. I think it's going to be a factor which is going to impact the way job offers work and the way mobility programs work for a number of years to come. I suspect that we'll never have a situation like, oh, it's just like 2018. It's never going to be like that again. It's always going to be a consideration going forward.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that too, because one other little nugget about Gen Z is it is estimated that they will only stay in their positions anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. So if that is the case and they are eager to move or to have those developmental opportunities, that means more business for all of us in the relocation industry. So this could actually be a good thing.
Long may it continue.
Well, I don't know if I can put a bow on this like Cindy's been doing so well, but I like Andy's note that it's never going to be like this again. So if we take something to heart, that's probably something to lean on. Glancing at the clock, this is a great place to leave it. So thank you again to our panel, Andy, Brenda, Ava, Cindy, and to everyone who sent in questions. We appreciate it.